You have these ways in which you relate with people your whole working career or your whole life, and then suddenly some of that changes. Maybe that's not always a bad thing, but it is different, and it is something emotional that has happened in the past year and a half in some of my relationships with people.
Two lifelong friends document and share their personal stories as they seek financial independence and to retire early. One reaches FIRE in 2020 during a global pandemic, inspiring the other to play catch-up. This is Two Sides of FI.
The whole point of this show is to sort of compare and contrast the two sides of FI. And since you're now 12 months into it, full year into it, I just want to get your reflections on how it's been. What, did it meet your expectations? I have probably, 35 or 40 different questions of you. So I'm going to kind of jump right in. Can you think of a day that you had in the past year that was like, this is why I did this? Because you texted me at one point and you're like, oh, today was such a FI day. I don't know if that was that's true or not.
Lori was really interested in getting an e-bike so we could go to farther flung places, with varying terrain and carry stuff and still get home. And so, we one day took that day, basically brand new e-bikes. We'd had them a couple days and rode out to a brewery we really like and went there and had lunch and had a flight of tasters. And then we, after that, we rode out to a winery and visited that. And then, just kind of like took a leisurely
Still illegal
day.
By now.
And it was not illegal. And it was just really nice. And I was just struck by the moment. And I definitely texted Eric and like a picture of like the flights and said ultimate fire day or something like that, or fire life.
And you know what I said? Do you remember what I said?
I'm happy for you. I look forward to that myself.
I did say I'm happy for you, but then I followed it up by saying must be nice.
Oh, you did put it must be nice in there. You're literally the only person I would send that to, because I would just get a must be nice or silence or like a middle finger emoji from even people who I'm pretty close to. I mean, I don't talk in those terms. That would be rude. But
it was hard typing that, I'm very happy for you, but I did mean it. I sincerely meant it. What's been better than expected and what's been worse than expected? I want the real picture.
Yeah. I think net positive for sure. There's no question. And I went back and read some of the stuff I wrote at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, just to kind of remind myself like how those stages went. Cause there's definitely some stuff that was worse than I thought it would be. But I think better than expected, just the idea of adjusting from doing this job to having a career that looked a certain way and suddenly not doing it. That transition was better than I thought. I haven't found myself missing like the specific work or feeling like that sense of contribution or mental challenge. Like I was kind of worried at times that absence would be a big problem. And so the fact that it hasn't been doesn't mean there's not stuff about it I don't miss, and we can talk about that. But on net, yeah, that's been better than I thought. I largely spent the first 6 weeks after leaving my job moving, right? Packing, moving, unpacking, getting set up. Suddenly, I had more free time, if you will, to start really thinking. And my thoughts naturally, I guess, went to like, oh, what have I done here? This is a big change. So maybe there's some of each.
Well, so how do you work through that? Because I can picture myself and a lot of people who are heading into FI saying, ooh, getting to that point. So how do you work through it?
I suppose part of it is like any transition, right? You go through kind of stages, right? And you kind of get your way out the other side. But I think mechanically, the best thing for me was, number one, was probably writing, right? Blogging, and just getting my thoughts down and being able to process them by doing that and then reviewing them and seeing what I took from it. And the second thing is probably just talking to people, opening up about what I was feeling, conversations with my wife, Lori, conversations with you, somebody who has no problem holding me accountable for things that I'm doing and thinking, right? You don't have to live in the same house with me after said conversation. So perhaps it's better to...
Oh man, did I lob some grenades in there or something?
No, actually, I think it was highly effective, some of the conversations we had, and we could talk about that.
Give me an example while we're here.
First thing that came to mind was this idea of Stop trying to jam stuff in and feel like you're not succeeding if the day isn't full. And even when it was fun stuff, right, or things I really wanted to do, like, when I was working on iOS programming, which was about 6 months that I really worked on that pretty hard, 4 to 6 months, or, just taking a walk by a certain time. Like, I definitely started to like find myself setting little deadlines. And those go from like aspirational to like pressure really quick for me. And so you calling me out on that was definitely very helpful. I think the second thing I took from you was there were times where I definitely felt like I had to make progress on figuring out, what was next, right? I've bought this time to explore all these things I want to do and try these hobbies and test this stuff out. But I found myself putting pressure on myself to winnow them down to like a short list of things I better start doing. And you were pretty honest about your own experience, and maybe this is a good time to maybe make it relevant to this. But just when you're looking for the next thing, like you kind of got a random walk and you got to try things and fail at them and be comfortable with that. That's the normal process, even though it's foreign to me. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, what's your recall of that topic?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And it's not surprising. I think that you landed there, but when I was sort of giving you advice and telling you about my own experiences, I thought, well, why doesn't he see this? Didn't he just create all this white space to step into? And, wouldn't you naturally just want to take advantage of that? But, it was interesting. It was a learning lesson for me too, because you basically said, look, this isn't how I've operated my life for the past 23 years or however many it was, and it's a big change. And I had to rewind back to my day one, like the last big transition that I made working for someone else to starting my own business, and think, oh yeah, that does feel really scary. That's not a normal feeling to, want to explore. And you are naturally, I think of you as being a really goal driven person. And when you don't have a specific goal, it means you don't have a specific line between here and there. And, we all like to chart a path and try and follow a course. And man, that is scary, but it's also kind of cool. I had fun watching you come to this realization that it wasn't suffering necessarily, but you have to sit with it. You sit with this idea that, like, if I open this door, I'm not closing all the other doors over here, but I'm opening this door into this room that has then 1,000 new doors in it. And I get to choose another door there. And you keep going on this sort of infinite loop of opportunity and interest and excitement. And I think it took you opening a few of those doors to really recognize that. Yeah. And I don't know, it's been a really cool process to see happen. And I'm glad you've reflected on that in a way. And also that you've been writing about it, because I saw, even just through your writing, a change, not only in your attitude, but in how you write and how you see the world. And I mean, I don't know if you feel that way at all, but it sounds like writing maybe was helpful for you in processing that, because you're the only person who can do this. If I think about, maybe this was first 3-6 months, you started having these opportunities, right, for consulting. Like, tell me about the draw back into what felt comfortable for you because of money or validation, or tell me about that, because that felt like a big deal.
Within the first couple months, I started to get pull from my network, my workplace network, to do some consulting. People I'd worked with before who knew me by reputation. And I thought, right, I'm not sure what I want to do with this, but let me hang my consulting sign out there. If nothing else, it's kind of like the protective part of me, like saying, I have a workplace gap on my LinkedIn profile. Why don't I put a consulting thing up there like everybody does? Like, if I decide somehow, which would shock me, but like, oh boy, I want to go back to work, having a consulting kind of tenure in there, not such a bad thing. So hung that out there and started to take a few calls. And I quickly realized that people were willing to pay me what I thought was a fair rate for my time. I would say it started with just a couple of 45 to 60 minute calls. I'm like, hey, this is easy money. Like, I could do a few of these. But I quickly realized that there were people who wanted me to do more. And I actively considered and even consulted with you on this idea of taking on a bigger project just to see if it's something I wanted to do. And,
like 3 to 6 months or something, like
maybe 3 months, something like that. But
like 20 hours a week. Or more,
I would say at most. I would say, honestly, I never considered more than that. I was very fearful. At least I had some wits about me to take on more than that. But, the more I reflected on it, the more I talked to you about it, I realized that I wasn't entertaining those ideas out of some longing for what I had left behind and a need to be intellectually stimulated in that way. Honestly, it was as simple as I was shocked that people were willing to pay for my expertise that much. And it seemed stupid to turn that down.
Yeah.
Right. It's why would I do that? I should be grateful that people want to work with me and that they value my experience. If people knew what I was turning down, they would think I'm a fool. So I got over that idea. And I quickly realized that I wasn't hungry for that type of work. What I can say is I have never felt a pull to go back full-time working for somebody else in an office or remotely, despite inquiries that have come in. They've never been appealing. Thank you, but no thank you a number of times already.
It's interesting. That conversation, as I recall, was, okay, well, you've reached financial independence, so money is off the table.
Right.
So the only reason you can do this is because you're interested in the subject matter, or there's some other motivating factor that's outside of a financial reason. And I think your conclusion was, well, there really wasn't any, right?
Yeah.
It's financially, you were pretty motivated by it financially, which I totally get. And it helps me to kind of refocus in on this idea of, okay, you were saving all this time and then you have to flip the switch and go to spending. Did that feed into that kind of calculus there?
It's not so much that, and more about it's about the practical me and the aspirational me kind of at odds with each other. So, we have talked about sequence of return risk in these early years when you start to draw down being the area of highest, potential pitfalls, right? If the market suddenly goes south, you don't want to have that happen in the earliest years when you start drawing down, because you're drawing down your principal when you don't want to be. And so part of me was like, well, this could be a hedge, talking myself into it. Oh, well, doing some projects is a hedge. I could just save that. Or, I wouldn't have to withdraw for vacations or things like that. And thankfully, I have great people in my life, like my wife and you, my friend, saying, hold on now. Make sure if you're considering this, it's for the right reasons, right? It's you want to do this work. You want to be tied to these companies or these people because now you're making commitments again. And that's going to have consequences. And by consequence, I don't necessarily mean bad, but it will absolutely impact the other things that have ostensibly set out to do here. And when I actually evaluated that, I realized, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't want to trade that freedom.
So let's fast forward now to present day. You're 1 year into it, and tell me about your current work situation. 1 day
a week. I pour wine at a local winery tasting room, which
would this classify as a hobby job?
Oh, totally, dude. I can make 20 times more an hour doing consulting. So no, I am not doing this for the money.
So your rationale for doing this was what? Because to me, this just flies in the face of every financially independent person who wants to own all their time. It's completely crazy. Tell me why
it sounds crazy on the surface, but in essence, it's just me spending my time how I want. The kind of conversation I had with one of the owners of the winery was, this sounds like fun. Yeah. I like wine. I like education, right? I'm a beer judge. I do educational things in that venue. I thought it'd be just super fun. I would learn some stuff and I would work with people who seem to me pretty interesting and have their head on their shoulders. And by the way, they have good wine. The second thing is pointing towards one of the aspirational targets is I have had this idea for a long time. My wife and I, we're both longtime brewers. We like everything beer and have said, maybe we want to open a very small brewery and tasting room. And whether it's a romantic notion or otherwise, one of the thoughts I've always had is, just talking to people about something you made, helping them learn about it, find the thing that they like that's going to be very rewarding. And so while I'm not going to be talking about wine that I made, it's going to test out the idea of whether I really would enjoy standing around talking about something, repeating myself to different people and listening to their questions, some of which I've heard a million times, or is that something I don't enjoy at all? And so if someone's willing to pay me a little bit and give me some discounts on wine so I can see if this is a reasonable idea or not, sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it, I'm solving a problem for them and they're helping me answer a question. Do I like something like this?
How has your net worth changed over the past year?
It's grown a lot because the market. Yeah. And I'm, greater than 85% stock.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So, and like, do you anticipate that allocation changing over time? Like, are you in the sort of preservation phase, or are you still like, because I struggle with that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this isn't financial advice because each of our situations is so different, but based on the size of my portfolio, we can safely let the engine do its thing and take advantage of the volatility when it can, knowing that the rest of the portfolio has us covered when it's not in the direction that we want it to be. So no, I don't see that allocation changing anytime soon. I am planning for a long life, and we're going to let the stock portion of the assets do their thing.
Yeah, it's comforting to hear you say that you're not spending a lot of time thinking about finances. I mean, that is one of the major goals of becoming financially independent, that you set a plan and put it on autopilot. And as long as the fundamentals are good, you just let it work for you. So yeah, that's good. Let's talk a little bit about health.
Okay.
Physical, mental health. I've kind of heard from people in retirement that you're trading sort of one set of stressors for another. So in, say, the work environment or pre-fi, you're worried about finances, you're worried about your job commitments. What stressors are you feeling now?
There's no new stressors I would attribute to leaving my job. I am now cognizant of the idea that we are drawing down and we are no longer actively contributing. Yes, we have capital appreciation from what the market does, but I am no longer taking money and putting it away. I am taking it out. So I'm cognizant of that. I don't think I've had that go to the level of worry. Okay.
So you have the entire day. You could get up in the morning and have mimosas for breakfast. You could have a beer at lunch, and you could be drinking by 3 in the afternoon, your afternoon beer, right?
Yep.
Like, describe to me what that health space looks like, because I could see for myself treating this like one big vacation.
Yeah, I mean, sure, the temptation is there, right? I mean, I'm surrounded by temptation. I've got tons of wine.
You're working in place.
I've got a couple of kegs of beer. Lori works at a brewery part-time. I work at a winery part-time. But I mean, I had always intended to break a lot of bad habits that are easily held when you travel a lot and when you have lunch meetings and they're constantly catering and things like that. I mean, I like to cook, so I make all my meals now, except when the rare times we go out. So I would say I had intended to eat better, intended to exercise even more, get out every single day, and I've done that stuff. So I would say on net, I'm doing a lot better than I did. I've lost weight. I'm in better shape than I was, before retiring. I think I have found a pretty good balance, and because I get out so much, hike and or bike every single day, Lori and I don't feel too guilty about taking the freedom on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. to go to a winery and do a tasting, because we can, and that's the freedom we bought for ourselves, and we're trying to lead pretty healthy lives. And so I would say it is certainly very possible to take advantage of this and treat every day like a vacation. I think we're doing a good job of saying, well, there's vacation and there's, times when you blow it out, you're visiting people, and then there's every day. And I think I'm pretty happy with how it's gone.
How about like relationship wise, like you and your wife are spending a lot more time together in the same space, right? Anything changed there?
I think in the first few months, I realized that a lot had changed, and, I'm around a lot more often, and Lori was, used to working in a certain way and kind of having the house operate in a certain way. And suddenly like I'm in the middle of it, and there's things that she just needs to do, and they might be annoying me.
Like what?
I don't know, like vacuuming around me when I'm working at my desk or whatever. And it's like clearly she's working, getting used to being around each other all the time. It's many years since Lori and I have worked together and spent that much time together every day. I think it went pretty good.
When people ask you what you do, what's your answer?
Very often, especially if it's somebody I'm meeting new, I'll say that I'm a consultant. Once I get to know somebody and they ask me a little more about that, I would typically say, until last year, I worked in biotech. And then since then, I do some consulting and kind of working on what comes next, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you never say you're retired.
Rarely. Very rarely, I would say, because I've gotten, some pretty odd reactions to it. So I would not say I have mastered the art of talking about this transition, but I have come to terms with certain language that I find at least gets the conversation started, until I get to know somebody better.
Have you been bored yet?
No. Whether it's this work we're doing on the show, whether it's, skill development, I have a very long list, and things are constantly being added to it, of things I want to explore and learn more about. And it was always my sort of dream to have the time to do that stuff. I'm still learning how to balance the kind of pull to knock things off the to-do list versus give myself time to explore and learn. And I wouldn't say that I'm a hardcore time blocker in terms of making and managing. I suspect you're a lot better at that. I mean, I learned that concept from you. I think I am learning more with each day, how to do that and be comfortable with the fact that some days the blend may differ. But no, bored is not a word I would ever use. Not yet.
That's good.
Is it a fear of yours when you think about pulling that trigger? Do you worry that you might be bored versus how you spend time now?
Not worried about it. I have enough interest. No,
that was my suspicion. I wouldn't think you would be. I suspect you've got a long list of stuff you want to get done that you can't do.
But I don't know. I mean, 10 years in?
Sure.
How am I going to feel 10 years? It's a little scary. I mean, if I'm being honest. And it's one of the pushbacks that I hear from people who are critical of the decision to FI at 50, which is, roughly where I'm at. And so I feel like I'm always having to answer that question. And so I just want to know, kind of what you're feeling with. I don't think of you as someone who ever actually gets bored.
There's a lot of merit to what you said about, 10 years from now, because everything I'm talking about now is from the perspective of 1 year.
Yeah.
And one very strange year, right? In a time of COVID. But everything is new in the first 12 months after leaving work that you've been doing for nearly 25 years. 5 years from now, I suspect my everyday will be a lot different, right? Our daughter will be in college and well settled into it, a couple years into it probably. And, we're hopefully going to be traveling in the way that we want to. And so everything will probably be different. And I have no idea how I'll feel then. But I'm open to the idea that things are going to continue changing and I'm going to have to adapt with them.
What are your expectations for next year when we have this conversation in 1 year? What are your big concerns moving between 12 months and 24 months?
I don't know if I would call it a concern, but I do wonder what the next year will bring from a, stock market perspective. It's very easy to feel financially secure in early retirement when the market is behaving.
Yeah.
Right? How could I be worried? But whether one believes we are due for a correction or not, corrections happen. The market doesn't only go up. This is a very, very long bull run. And so bad things will happen and downturns will come. And I wonder how I'll feel. Will I be able to maintain the level head that I was honestly very able to do during accumulation years? It never worried me at all. On the positive side, I will feel fulfilled from being able to take longer vacations and being able to finally do that, right? We're finally taking some time this summer to visit friends and family, and we're going to do it for not the usual 1 week or maybe 10 days if we're lucky we get to do. We're going to do it for 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. That'll be the longest vacation you probably ever took, right?
By double. I would never take more than 2 weeks at a time. And even that was rare. And so taking 5 weeks to visit family, visit friends, do some fun stuff on our own, I don't even know what that's going to feel like. But I like to think that a year from now, we'll have gotten to do a few trips as a family and maybe with friends, and that will be really fulfilling, because that was one of the things we were working for, was that ability. I think I have more questions or wonder where I'll be in a year than kind of predictions, but I'm very interested to look back and see how I view that second year versus the first year. And, am I still random walking as much in terms of pursuits and interests, or have I started to narrow it down in any way?
Yeah, it's too early to settle on one thing. I mean, I think the random walk is the best thing.
So I like it. It suits my brain.
Knowing what you know now, year into it, you've had few bumps in the road. Doesn't sound like they've really derailed you or sent you back to the workplace necessarily out of retirement, if you want to call it that. But for someone who's looking ahead to this, say they're going to enter this sort of first year soon, within the next year or so, what can they do to prepare themselves for that? What would you offer as advice?
The first is be prepared for change. And that's sort of paradoxical, right? How can you prepare for change? What I mean is just be comfortable with the idea that your emotions are going to change. The way you think about things is going to change over time. We all go through periods of change in different ways based on what we are going through at the time those changes happen, our innate nature, etc. And just be comfortable with the idea and remind yourself that changes are going to come. There are going to be challenges. There's going to be amazingly positive feelings, but there's a cycle to change, and that's just how it works. And the thing that goes along with that is good communication. Your family is going to be experiencing financial independence. Most of us have somebody in our life, a partner, a spouse, children, parents. And the more open you can be about what you're feeling, what you're concerned about, what feels great, the better, because I absolutely found in the first 3 months that I was keeping stuff in and it was causing me to be irritable. I needed to share openly, especially with my wife, what I was thinking about. Because
so what did you share with her that you were keeping inside?
Not getting the validation from work anymore. And that might translate to, and it was translating to, me feeling like underappreciated at home, right? Uh-huh. Like, things I was doing around the house to contribute, or, cooking, just small things. But, for me, like I was missing the personal satisfaction from somebody being happy with what I produced, and just being open with that helped, them be aware that, oh, that's important to you. And that's how we'll support you right now. Sounds like such a little thing.
So it was made manifest in you being kind of grouchy, and so you basically said, hey, look, this is how I'm feeling. And your wife was like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Right.
I mean, Was it that simple?
Yeah, pretty much. Another example would be when I was putting pressure on myself to feel like I needed to start carving a path towards something next. Just sharing that I was feeling that, provided, her the opportunity to say, hey, just remember, this is why you did this, right? You're supposed to have the time. Some of the things you said too, you don't have to do something next. I think Lori put it really well when she was describing to our daughter the other day, like, why does she work 1 day a week in a brewery doing their lab work? Even though it's not very much money for that kind of job. She's like, well, I decided a few years back that at this stage of my life, I should be doing things that I would do for free. Right? I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to feel fulfilled by it. I'm contributing. I'm learning. That's why I'm doing stuff. Wow, that's great advice. So, when I think about like the winery, for example, I would volunteer for that. I would pour at a festival or whatever, like for that experience, and it's fun and whatever. So, not doing stuff for the money, but, again, back to her point, it's about having the freedom to make those decisions. Don't put pressure on yourself. This is what I expected you would be doing. So whether it's, you're doing it intentionally or it's just creeping in, it doesn't matter. Like here's how you put the idea out of your head. I've never found myself questioning if this was the right thing to do. I have wondered what it has and would and will change in the relationships I have with people, right? Because even just talking about this step I've taken is difficult. It's something we've devoted time to on our channel. And there's probably still a lot more to be said about it, right? I mean, there are a couple conversations I didn't have until months into it with some family members, because I still have difficulty talking about this path I set out on and that I have now executed upon. It is a weird thing to think like, oh, my relationship with certain people has changed as a result of this life decision, right? Even like former work colleagues, there are people who really get it and are interested in it, and I get so much out of talking to them. But then there's other people who are like, that's a waste. Like, it's just the feeling I get. No one has spoken those words to me, but
totally.
You have these ways in which you relate with people your whole working career or your whole life, and then suddenly some of that changes. Maybe that's not always a bad thing, but it is different, and it is something emotional that has happened in the past year and a half in some of my relationships with people.
Yeah, I think people don't talk about this much, but there is some distance that this puts between you just because of people's just, preordained ideas about money, and also, looking at their own financial situations and wishing for something different, I guess. And, I feel good and confident in the plan that I'm putting together.
Yes.
And it's been great watching you execute on the plan you put together. And I find I get a lot of satisfaction in that, and it makes me want to share it with other people. But I then realize very quickly that people aren't just not very many people are open to it.